Well, good evening, everybody. I'm super excited for this call, and I'm excited to lead you through tonight. The people are just joining and joining and joining and joining and joining. So let's take a minute and let some more people join. Let's let some more people in and learn about this amazing, so they can learn about this amazing brain fuel. They're going to learn a lot more than that. But with that said, before I really kick this off, I'm going to ask you all a few questions. So I like full participation. I'm going to actually change the full screen here. I will introduce myself here in just a moment. So I promise. Some of you have met me before. Some people were new. So I'm excited that I get to share some really cool wisdom and some of my background with y'all. But before I do that, I want to ask you all some questions. So in the chat today, I want you to just first off let me know, where are you from? Like, what city, state, country? Let's go with those three. I currently am in Santa Rosa, California. That's just about an hour north of San Francisco. I grew up in southern Minnesota. So if you'd have told me when I was a little kid that I was going to live north of San Francisco, I would have said, "Where's that?" I don't even know where that's at. Uh, but anyway, I love where I live. I think I live in one of the greatest places. The climate is amazing. No bugs, not hot, not cold. It's great. So anyway, but where do you live? I want to see. I mean, I got hold on. Hold on. I didn't have the chat pulled up. So we got oh my goodness, Alabama. We got Alaska. That's cool. South Carolina. We got Eastern PA, Central Jersey, Southern California. What's up, Deborah? Wyoming. I mean, Canada. Hey, I forgot. We Canadians, you're not allowed on here. No, I'm just kidding. We love you, Canada. Uh, I can pull out the Canada accent pretty well. I grew up in Minnesota, which wasn't that far from there. St. Louis, we got New York, we got Texas in the house, we got Vegas in the house. We got another Canadian. Oh, I love our Canadians. Wisconsin. I mean, how fun! How fun! Well, tonight we'll see if we get anybody from the Europe. We have sometimes Europeans will get up in like 3 o'clock in the morning to be on. We do different events for them, but super exciting. Now, question number two. Before I get in and introduce myself, we have more people just keep rolling in, so I'm gonna take a second to do that. But question number two: how many servings of ketones do you drink a day? If you drink ketones, I didn't ask that. I'll ask that. Well, let's start with that. How many servings of ketones do you drink a day? Do you drink one? Do you drink two? Do you drink 12? I mean, you shouldn't drink 12. There's probably no real clinical reason or real reason to have it. We got one, two. We have a three-er in there. We got one, two, one, two, one, two, 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 one, two. Uh, I'm a two-person a day. Today I'm having my third. I'm having three today. I have three some days, two some days. I was thinking back. I wanted to add up how many packs of ketones I've had over the last 11 years, and I haven't done. If anybody wants to do the math for me, I'd probably have averaged 2.2 a day. I would say that's probably my average. There's actually a video of me on. We used to have a big tub of ketones like 10 years ago, and I had a tube. I didn't drink the whole tub. It was like maybe, I don't know, three servings at the bottom, and I made it water in the tub and was drinking it. I was in an airport somewhere. So that got onto Facebook, and I don't know what happened. But okay, 8,833. Heather says, how many? That's about. I've had close to 10,000 ketones, Lynn. I like that. 10,037. All right. So all right, last question for me. What is your favorite flavor? This was a hard one for me. Favorite flavors was hard for me because you'll get to know all about me. I'm a former Marine. I grew up in southern Minnesota, if I didn't say that already. So back then, I mean, if things taste like dirt, that's probably okay. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And so when it comes to flavors, when we started with Prove It, we had one flavor, and I didn't actually particularly like the flavor, but I actually didn't care because I knew what ketones did. I was like, I don't care if it tastes like dirt. In the Marine Corps, I did this thing where we had to take a string and you put a little metal cup, and then you put a little bit of something sweet at the bottom of the cup, and then the ants would get in there, and then you mash up, put some water in it, and you drink it. Right? That's a survival technique. I know that's kind of gross, but anything better than that is good, right? Anything, and it's good and it's healthy. I mean, this is great. But then we got into the flavors, and a lot of people, they're more flavor based, and I'm like, but the science, that's all you have to care about is the science. So We have lots of, we have tropical K1, we have peach, white peach, we have K1. Well, K1 has flavors, y'all. So, Deborah, I want to know the K1 flavor that you like. Same thing. Who else? Somebody else said K1 and they didn't say a flavor. Oh, tropical, Alan. I like it. Okay. All right. I'm done. I'm done asking all these questions. I'll probably ask a few more, but we're going to kick this thing off. And if you didn't notice, I'm taking a little extra time. Two of our specialists getting on tonight. They have young kids and they're putting them to bed right now. And they're like, "Hey, can we just go 5 minutes after?" I'm like, "Yes, you can. Don't worry." So you get a little bit of extra time of me. But with that said, I want to introduce myself. So my name is Dustin Schaefer. If we've never met before, I'm a father of four. I have a beautiful wife. They're actually, some of them are here, some of them are not, but they're in the other room. Um, I um, I live, like I said, in Northern California, Napa Valley. I don't live in Napa. I live in Sonoma County. But if you're a wine drinker, it's kind of the area I'm in. I'm not a big wine drinker, but there's a lot of it around here. My background: I was a former recon Marine. I was also a college athlete. I specialize in human performance. I thought my future was going to be in the sports world and working with high level athletes to perform at the highest level. And lo and behold, in my 20s, I got sick. I needed a knee replacement when I was 24 years old. I had a severe brain injury at the same time. And it was from different incidences. And then soon after that, I got diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's. It took many years to get diagnosed, by the way, because I'm not the normal guy to get person to get Hashimoto's. It's not normal to have somebody who's super in shape, super fit. It didn't make sense, right? So lo and behold, I went on a journey to get better and get healthy. And dealing with all these challenges, you don't realize things are bad until you wake up one day and you're just no longer yourself anymore. The only thing I always tell everybody, the gift I had with this whole journey for me is one, I have a propensity to not quit and always try hard to go for it and figure it out. So I had that gift, right? To no matter how much we couldn't find an answer to what was wrong with me, I had the ability to keep trying to find answers, even to my default sometimes, and or to a negative sometimes. But the other side of that was I didn't have kids yet. I didn't have family yet. I didn't have really anybody else to worry about. I had just me to worry about, and I had a pretty good career at the time, so I was fiscally okay. Spending a lot of money on my health, but I had the ability to make it. So I wasn't hurting in ways that a lot of people are. Even today, if the same challenges I had when I was my early 20s and mid 20s, if I had them today with four kids at home and careers and my wife working and all the things, I don't know how well I would have been able to get through it all. Right. And that's me going, I'm very sympathetic to anybody that's gone through challenges or gone through obstacles. And so through my journey, I went and hired a lot of people: Eastern medicine, Western medicine, traditional medicine, Chinese medicine, medicine that you probably should never try medicine. I tried a lot of different things. And I got more confused and I was getting less to the answer than I realized. Now, this is just my journey, but I got very fortunate to work with a lot of doctors that were willing to work with me to try to find some answers. And what I did is I actually went 14 days with no food. And yes, 14 days with no food. And it was out of desperation. And what I decided that I needed to do is go back to the basics. I didn't think that was the thing that was going to help me. What I thought was going to help me is I was going to try to figure out, like, what food should I eat? Like, how do I really know what's going to work well for my body? So every week for a year, I was going to add back one food. That's it. And then a year later, I was going to figure out what I was going to eat. If I felt bad, I was going to leave it out. If I felt good, I was going to keep it in. Okay, that's what I was going to do. Well, 5 days of not eating, I woke up. The guy that used to be the high level athlete and the happy, energetic guy. I used to sit in a dark room, by the way, y'all. I used to sit, like, half my day was in a dark room. That's how I lived. But I was single. I didn't have anything else going on, right? And I would just sit and stare at a wall. And then I would get up and go to work the next day, and I would go back and sit and stare at a wall. And so it was apparently a dark time in my life, but I was by myself, so I didn't really know how dark it really was, right? And so I did this 5 days and I woke up and I was like, I feel like me again. And then I realized the contrast of how bad I really, really felt. And what happened is, after about 3 days of no food, I did drink a lot of water and electrolytes and stuff like that. After 3 days with no food, guess what happened? My body started processing my fat efficiently without glucose, and it produced an energy called ketones. So ketones, there's two ways prior to our product being available to get into ketosis. There's actually more ways now. If you're pregnant, there's a lot of other ways. But the two main ways is fasting, no food for a long period of time. 3 days is minimum, and then even longer to get to a deeper state, or doing something called a ketogenic diet. Well, I didn't know what that really was at that time. So I did 5 days, I did 14 days total, but the 5 days in, I felt like alive to the point where like I just felt superhuman. Like I truly did. And I still had some health problems, right? So the health problems didn't go away. I just felt good, even though I had health problems, right? So for the next year, after 14 days, I added one food back at a time. 1 year later, I ended up eating a ketogenic diet. So I actually taught myself a ketogenic diet back in early 2000s. Um, and I started getting wise enough to realize there's actually a real science behind this, but it was hard to find it. Google wasn't really a thing yet, right? Googling things, you had to go to a library and still look stuff up. I happen to know really smart doctors. I started talking to them about this, and they're like, yeah, there's some validation here, there's some science here. So for 15 years, I lived in a ketogenic state through diet and through these extreme measures. And so, with all that said and done, I got to meet somebody in birthing class. So, after 15 years of doing the diet, I thought the only way to do this and get healthy and stay healthy in my life was to do this hardcore, crazy diet. My wife at the time, we have a newborn son, and she's begging me to stop the diet because, listen, when you eat like extreme all the time. My wife's a foodie. We actually just talked about it a few minutes ago. It's hard. It's really hard, especially back 15, 20 years ago when I was doing this because there wasn't a lot of food options. There wasn't a lot of alternative ways to eat low carb. You just had to eat protein and vegetables. That's all I ate all the time. And fat, protein, vegetables, and fat. It was boring. She hated it. She begged me to quit. And so I actually tried. I tried getting off the diet for 3 months until she started crying. She saw me it was a wedding. I get emotional when I think about it. I was at a wedding, and it was on Christmas Day, ironically. And she looked at, and literally, I got old. In 3 months, my body just was not doing well. So being in ketosis just seemed to really make me live my best life. And she goes, "You're gonna have to go back on your diet." Well, we didn't know Prove It was about ready to bring to the world the biggest breakthrough in health and wellness supplement history. We didn't know this was happening yet. And I finally got my hand on ketones. I've been drinking at least 2 servings a day for the last 11 years. I no longer follow the strict ketogenic diet. I still follow a very healthy diet. I still follow a pretty low carb diet, but I'm not in that strict plan all the time. I get to have some freedoms and flexibilities. And I'm just excited about that. So with that said and done, that's who I am. They let me host these events because I get to talk to these brilliant, amazing doctors and scientists. And tonight we're going to talk about the brain. We're going to talk about how ketones impact the brain. And there's so many things that they do, but we're going to talk about it in a way that, we know that we have stress. We have people go through ups and downs. People are challenged with life obstacles. Biochemistry is being impacted, lots of variables going on. And ketones play a really important role of helping people find maybe some normalcy in that balance so that they can handle and deal with some of their challenges in a better way, just like I got to do, right? Without doing this crazy ketogenic diet. Or maybe they choose to do the diet and they combine it with it. So, with that said, I get to introduce our first doctor, who is just an unbelievable, passionate young man. Just got done putting his little one to bed, I think, down for the night, and he's not just passionate about health and wellness. He's got a performance background. He's been published hundreds of times. He's a co-author of the Ketogenic Bible. He's also co-owner of ASPI out in Florida. He works with the elite of elite athletes and humans on this planet. But if you get to know him and you read his research, a lot of it stemmed from his family. And he looked at and he started working with his mom, who had a Crohn's issue, and how the ketones can help with that. But one of the things he talked about on a call we did last Friday for some doctors is that there's a lot of forging research on the brain and ketones, which to me is what we should be talking a lot more about, even though it gets overlooked sometimes. So we all get to hear from him tonight. So if you guys are ready for this, in the chat, give Dr. Ryan Lowry some love and welcome on tonight's call.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Dustin. Appreciate you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, it's always great to have you on, and I'm going to let you kind of kick into it, and maybe after we can stick around for some questions. But let's dig into this. I hope he went to bed okay tonight. Everything was good.
He
He
did.
went
He
down.
was great.
All right,
I had a great night, but
good.
the first thing that popped up when I was on the Zoom was Dorothy on the boat.
Oh,
I'm jealous. I'm jealous. You out there enjoying it. I was like, I wish I was on a boat. I just had a
it's
screaming
it's
toddler.
sunny. Where are they
Yeah.
at? Where are they at?
Beautiful. We're
Uh,
all jealous. That's great.
yes, we are. All right, sir. Well, thanks for being on tonight. We're looking forward to hearing this great insight.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. I and Dustin asked me to put together a couple of slides, and I think right now the focus on the brain has never been more important, right? As Dustin mentioned, a little bit about my background. I got into studying ketogenic therapies for my mom, and then my aunt. All both of them have an autoimmune condition, and so I was just fascinated with looking at how nutrition can have an impact on them. And then more recently, my father, I haven't shared this with many people, but my father is a military veteran, and has some PTSD and some things going on with his brain. And so we've always been focused on how to optimize really mental health. As a former athlete myself, I wish I had this technology back when I was playing baseball in college, and also even likely when I was younger playing contact sports, right? Because the data on the brain has is exploding, right? And you'll see today, I'm going to walk you through some of that data. And some of that data really starts out in like mechanistically. They'll look at like cell studies, then they'll do like animal studies. Now we're starting to come into like human trials. And so I like to say we're just kind of at the beginning, which is really incredible to think about because I mean, we've been talking about ketones in the brain for like 10 years, right? Which seems like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm seeing people continue to talk about creatine, which is I think is incredible, and I think it's an incredible ingredient. But look at creatine's been around for like decades, and it's like a very hot ingredient right now, and it has a lot of benefits, which is great. But like ketones, it's just the beginning, right? And so I think it's incredible to see how far we've come, but really where things are at in terms of the brain. So let me know, give me a thumb up if you guys can see my screen. Great. Let me see if I could share this full screen. Uh, let's enter it. There we go. My computer decides to go slow. Continue to share PowerPoint window. Yes. We good still? Good. Excellent. So we know the brain was really designed to run on two fuels, right? Most people really have only introduced it to one, and Dustin just gave a great preamble of like how most people really are primarily running on one source of fuel, and that is glucose. And unless you are going prolonged periods of time without eating, or if you're on a ketogenic diet, like he mentioned, it's very hard for your brain to run on that other source of fuel, right? And if we look at our brain, right, it's a small portion of our body, yet obviously a very important part of our body, but it really uses up 20% of our fuel, right? Kind of crazy to think about. 20% of the fuel that our body utilizes comes from our brain. You think of like muscles and your GI, like 20% of it goes to your brain. And under normal conditions, glucose is really the only fuel that it gets. However, as we get older, and as you start to blood sugar tends to rise and then it kind of falls off, right? When we're young and you're kids and they're running around, right? I see it even with my toddler. He doesn't have a ton of sugar. We limit sugar, but sometimes if we're out, I'm like, he can run and run and run and run, and he feels like he's like the Energizer Bunny, never runs out of energy, right? But me, it's like I eat like two cookies and I'm like up and I crash, right? And that happens as we get older. Our body cannot utilize carbohydrates as well as we get older, right? However, most people live in that chronic condition, right? That chronic state. Um, and so the reality is there was a backup there the entire time, right? If you look at it, BHB is really our brain's second fuel. And ketones, again, like Dustin mentioned, can come from the liver during fasting, or directly from something like exogenous ketones that up until 10 years ago wasn't a possibility, but thanks to Prove It, we've now made that a possibility at both a reasonable price point and an incredible taste, right? Before that, we were drinking these liquids that were $1,000 per serving and tasted like 15-year-old gin, right? It wasn't sustainable. Now we have something that is absolutely incredible and it tastes great, right? BHB now crosses the blood-brain barrier, right? Through these things called monocarboxylic acid transporters. You don't need to remember that. All it means is there are tunnels going into your brain that can take up and utilize BHB. Now, here's something that's important because I'm going to reference this later on. Inside the brain cells, it gets converted into something called acetyl-CoA, which basically allows it to go, that energy to go into the mitochondria. It's going to be very important. And we'll talk a lot about mitochondria. I know a lot of you are thinking back to eighth grade science and you're like, mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. Yes, it is the powerhouse of the cell and it's very important. And it's one of the areas that I think ketones have a huge potential, particularly for the brain, right? And that then becomes ATP or our body's energy source, right? It enters into something called the Krebs cycle and it allows it to get utilized. Does that make sense? That align, right? So now we have ketones, and this I just showed you kind of how there is this quote unquote backup fuel, which to me is the primary fuel that our body should be running on. But for many people, that's considered their backup because they're primarily eating carbohydrates, right? Now, the question is, can this happen without deprivation? Dustin just alluded to this, right? Prior to this, talk about a ketogenic diet. You had to have continuous carbohydrate restriction, very low carbohydrate, and it was very difficult for most people to sustain, right, for a prolonged period of time. However, now you have ketone salt, which can raise blood ketones rapidly, right? And even when, this is very important, even when you're eating carbohydrates, you still are able to enter this area of nutritional and therapeutic ketosis, right? Unhurt, you can't do that with a ketogenic diet, right? You go and you have 10 chocolate chip cookies, you're out. You're no longer in this range, right? Now, I'm not recommending that. I'm not saying, hey, go eat 10 chocolate chip cookies and go drink ketones. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is like if you have carbohydrates, you eat even healthier carbohydrates while consuming exogenous ketones, you're still able to enter this range, which is where we see a lot of these therapeutic benefits, right? Um, and this gap opens with age, right? As we get older, and the studies look at this, they actually do imaging on the brain. And really, it tends to start after the age of 35. The brain uptake of glucose starts to decline rapidly, right? And we start to see something called mild cognitive impairment. It's something we're all constantly battling. There's stages of like progression in cognitive impairment like Alzheimer's and dementia is like the ultimate. We want to avoid getting to that level. There's a lot of factors that go into that, but mild cognitive impairment could just be as simple as like I'm not remembering names as much anymore. I'm kind of forgetting where my keys are, and even life gets in the way, and you're starting to get some cognitive impairment. We see this after the age of 35, and a lot of that is due to a reduction in the ability to take up glucose in the brain, right? And so imagine your brain needs energy. I just mentioned it takes up 20% of the energy of our bodies, and you're unable to take it up efficiently. And so what do you think is going to happen, right? It's not going to work as well. It's not churning the same way it used to churn when it was running full. Those tunnels going into your brain start to close up a little bit, right? So not as much energy is getting in. Well, if you look at ketones, those tunnels going into the brain are different than the tunnels that take up and utilize glucose. So while the tunnels that go into the brain to utilize glucose might be closed, so the ones that take up ketones are still there, right? Those do not decline as we get older. And we see that through these cerebral imaging studies, right? So it does not lose its ability to utilize ketones. Now, here's some high level things that BHB does once it's inside, right? one of the things that I like to refer is ketones are a signaling molecule, right? And so these are just some of the top six things that I like about ketones. One, in terms of ATP or energy generated, ketones generate more ATP than glucose, right? They are a more efficient fuel source. I like to say it pays better, right? If you have one molecule of ketone, one molecule of glucose, you're getting more out of the ketone, more ATP. That's great, right? Also calms the noise, right? And this is going to be important for when we're talking about some of the brain stuff that I'm going to talk about here shortly. There's something called glutamate inside of our brain. There's something called GABA. I'm sure you've heard of GABA, and adenosine. All these things are operating inside of our brain, and sometimes we have hyperexcitability, which means like your brain just can't turn off. And while doing that, we tend to have slower firing of the neurons. I like to say ketones tend to calm the noise, right? Meaning like it's not slowing things down where you're like, oh, I'm just lethargic and slow. It's calming the noise to keep me focused, right? Just by show of hands, I would love to see in the comments who here has noticed like some like focused, like calm, cool, collective, just locked in energy. All right, cool. I'm seeing it in the chats. It's great. And this is the reason why, right? This right here is the reason why, which is great. The other thing is there's something called the NLRP3 inflammasome. We talk about this. It's basically the bodyguard that protects the cells from inflammation, and ketones act as like a bodyguard for that switch. So it inhibits that. And then the last three that I wanted to just bring up, reactive oxygen species. It's like ping pong balls, like just hitting around inside the cells of your body, just bouncing off. You don't want that. That happens inside of our body, and so you don't want these ping pong balls bouncing all around your body, creating basically stress and what we call reactive oxygen species. It kind of removes that. They reduce that. The other thing is it increases something called BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor. This is the growth factor that's behind what we call neuroplasticity, our body's ability to adjust to stimuli and learning, right? When my wife is working with my toddler on like learning. Today he learned the letter F for farm. And so we were practicing farm all day long. He's learning that neuroplasticity in his brain is growing, right? That's due to something called BDNF. We are now replicating that or inducing that expression even as we get older, right? And then HDAC signaling. This is some of the signaling molecules that ketones have, which I could do a whole presentation on. But those are just six areas that I think are very powerful when it comes to ketones. I want to talk about really the number two and number five, right? Calming the noise, and then this element of BDNF. And Dustin asked me to talk about like the brain benefits, even going into like mental health and what ketones can do there. And this was a study I pulled, and I think this is really interesting. And like I said, these studies I want to make super clear. One was done in rats, and the other two were done on ketogenic diets, but they looked at the plasma level of ketones, right? So we can look at associations between the plasma levels of BHB and the plasma levels that you would get with like supplementation, right? And so this study is called the therapeutic potential of exogenous ketone supplements in treatment of psychiatric disorders. So they're basically saying, hey, based on all of the animal research that we've done on different treatments with psychiatric disorders, mood, anxiety, things like that, what does the evidence say? And so they basically looked in rats, they gave 1 week of ketone supplementation, and they found that anxiety decreased, and the animals were able to go through the maze faster as their ketone levels rose. So the animals who had low amounts of ketones didn't do as well. They tend to have higher anxiety and they tended to not go through the maze as well. And the animals who were taking up and utilizing ketones at a higher level of ketones were performing better. That makes sense? Right? And then same thing with mood and severe illness. These were actually done in humans and put on a ketogenic diet, these individuals. But what they did was they mapped the individual's responses to plasma levels of BHB, meaning the individuals who had higher levels of BHB performed better than the ones who had lower levels. And they saw better decreased in depression severity in that, and they also paired that with an animal study. And they think a lot of that's driven by that NLRP3 inflammasome, or basically lowering inflammation. If we're lowering inflammation in the body, we're lowering inflammation in the brain too, right? Which has a huge impact on our mood. And then they actually just recently did this pilot study in individuals, again, on a ketogenic diet, looking at bipolar and schizophrenia, and they saw very positive improvements in that. So there's a lot of mechanisms in which ketones are really working on mitochondrial function. I'm going to come back to that. Excitability and inflammation, which we know that alone has a huge impact on our health. And so I have a couple more slides here, and then we can open it up for Q&A. But basically, here's the thing that we need to look at from mechanistically how ketones are working to how does this impact like a day, right? How does this translate? Well, one is now with exogenous ketones, you have the ability to induce a state of ketosis really within minutes. It's not dictated by the last meal you ate. It's not dictated by having to, like Dustin said, fast for 72 hours and only drink nothing but water, right? We now have solutions to help us get these ketone levels, right? You also have this balanced excitability. One of the biggest things right now that you're starting to see in the energy space, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. In the energy space right now, a lot of things are driven primarily by caffeine, right? And with caffeine comes jitters, and sometimes that increases anxiety levels and things like that. So again, alertness without the jitter, the calm, cool, collective focus is very, very important. And then the science, right? We see lower amounts of inflammation, and that's important as well. Uh, this is one thing, again, I just put in. We talk a lot about protecting the house. Again, these are not, I'm not saying, hey, I don't want people going, oh, hey, Ryan, Dr. Ryan said, hey, ketones help decrease depression. Like these are, I'm talking mechanistically and how these ketones can have an impact mechanism body as well. And obviously we talk a lot about the impact on mental health, or mental focus and cognitive function. And then this is one of the areas I'm super excited about. Last two slides wrapping up here is this new ketone that's inside of our K1 has a lot of really interesting properties. So if you look at BHB, which is something we've been the ketone that we've been using, it's been inside of our formulas for 10 years. It's incredible. A lot of the data that I just pointed to is driven primarily by BHB, right? It's an excellent fuel. But when you look at the Krebs cycle, it's literally a cycle, it's a circle, and BHB enters at the top. And what happens is if you have something entering on one end, there's all these different processes that go around the wheel that need to happen. Well, in doing that, because you're entering up here, it might start to deplete some of the other areas of the wheel. And so, what do we do in that case? Well, that's where we come up with this term anaplerotic, or what C5s do, in that they basically help that wheel continue to go because it's coming in at the opposite end of the wheel to keep that wheel spinning, if that makes sense. And so there's a lot of really interesting data coming out on these C5s. They also cross the blood-brain barrier. But here's one of the ways that I'm seeing the future, and this is one of the areas Dustin asked me to talk about, like what's one of the areas I'm most excited about. I put this together as like areas that we're gonna be looking at in terms of like C5 ketones. I like utilizing this word mitochondrial resilience, right? Really interesting. So there's a very big longevity researcher named Dr. Eric Verdin out of the Buck Institute. They do incredible work on like longevity. And they recently came out and said, hey, listen, one of the things that we haven't talked about in longevity very much is that the fact that mitochondria have their own DNA. And as we get older, the mitochondria, it's kind of like an engine in your car. The mitochondria start to get worn out, worn out, worn out. And it's like you're driving on a highway and imagine like your engine starts to sputter and then all of a sudden the car just dies on the highway, right? We have tons of cells in our body, and every single day as we're getting older, that's happening. Cells are, because of the mitochondria, they're starting to sputter out, and you're starting to see these cells kind of die off, right? Which obviously isn't good and likely has a lot of implications of doing that. So this is one of I like is how do we make our mitochondria more resilient? That is something I'm fascinated with, and very, very, very important. Oh, did I lose you guys? There we go. Um, very, 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 very important. And so I say that to kind of wrap up here, so that way, there we go. I say that to say that's one of the areas that I'm the most fascinated with in terms of where ketones can go, the impact that they can have on our health. That's one of the areas that I'm most interested in. I think my camera froze, but there we go. I'm back. So
Gotcha.
cool. Thank you. I want to, yeah, I wanted to say that's one of the areas where when we look at mitochondrial health, if we can make our mitochondria more resilient to impacts that are happening, aging is one of them. And unfortunately, it's something that we are all doing. We're constantly battling aging every single day that we wake up. We're battling it. And so for me, instead of just looking at ketones of they're an energy source, I look at them as how do they have an impact on our brain, like we just kind of talked about. And in doing so, how do they have an impact on our mitochondria, which not only affect our brain health, it affects every other tissue and cell that's going on inside of our body. So I'll wrap it there. We could open it up for questions. But yeah, thank you, and appreciate everyone's time tonight.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, if you're okay, I'd love to ask you some questions. And if maybe we can, while I ask you a question, I'll read to see if there's any in the chat. But it's so crazy. Like I've heard a lot of this, but then you just put two things in there that I've never heard before, and it just let me ask you this before I get into it. Like, where do you see the science behind exogenous ketones moving towards? Because it seems like every year there's like a new turnover of like, wow, this it also does this. I mean, maybe there's an end to this, but to the wows, but where do you see it leading towards? Is it towards this resilience component? Is that you feel like that's the kind of the future of the research?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see more and more people focus on mitochondrial health and the impact that it has because it affects everything, right? And so you're talking about all these different things that are happening, aging, inflammation, all of it stems from really the mitochondria sputtering out and stopping working properly. They no longer work the way they should. And so if you can battle that, if you can help our mitochondria run more efficiently, what's the impact on that? That is where I'm the most fascinated with, and I think ketone can be a great tool to kind of protect those mitochondria and keep it running very efficiently.
Right, right. I know Gary Millett talks a lot about the amount. It's like 900,000 trillion or some mitochondria, and then it's like the decline is it's pretty steep. And if we can stop that or slow it down, obviously the sooner the better. And that was going to be my first question. I do have a couple questions in the chat. I'll come back to, but my question to you was, at what state? I mean, the, I guess what are the things that can impact the brain and maybe the how ketones could play a role. Like for me, I had a brain injury and my body was just abused, and it seemed like it maybe I had a bigger effect than if somebody that didn't have what I went through had, right? Like what are the things that can impact how the brain is responding to glucose? And maybe at what age does the brain really start to lean towards glucose ketones as a better fuel source? Do you know that, or is that maybe
Yeah,
too far
there
ahead
I
or
from a high level there's a multitude of things that affect it. One is inflammation, and that can be driven by like lifestyle, meaning like obesity, poor nutritional choices, lack of exercise. It also can be driven by stress, right? Chronic stress can drive up inflammation, which also ages us faster and also causes a whole host of issues within itself. The other one is a change in hormonal status, right? Dr. Andy talks
Okay.
about this all the time, but I actually just I was looking into this both for my wife and I'm sure many of you have been following along on social media to see there's a lot of discussion right now on like postpartum depression, right? So like it was an area I was fascinated in for my wife to try and see what can we do to try and like just give her the best odds nutritionally, exercise, supplementation wise. So I've been fascinated with starting that, and a lot of that is driven by hormones. There's a huge hormonal change in women who are pregnant and then postpartum, but that happens in menopause. That happens in males at certain times in their life as well. We have these various different hormonal changes that also has a huge impact as well.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, my wife's story, she was not very on board of drinking ketones. And she just didn't think she needed them, right? From what I was dealing with, and it didn't make sense. Well, I don't have any of your problems, so why would I drink these things, kind of thing. And I remember our daughter, and I was begging my wife because she, after our daughter was born, it was not. And my wife's a Marine and an attorney, so like making her mad is not a good for anybody. And so she hates it when I say that, but it's true. Anyway. I noticed the difference about 2 weeks. She just was lighter and just more playful and just happier, right? And then, but she didn't really notice it until she stopped, and that was about 30 days in. And then she felt the kind of like the surge of hormones and whatever was going on. We didn't, nothing was being tested at this point. We just noticed she was getting happier. She stopped ketones and she got less happy. And we're like, okay. So for the last 11 years, she drank two a day because it made her happy. And, or it created the environment for her to have joy. I don't know if it actually made her happy or not, but she had all the reasons to be happy. So, but that leads me to another question is there really any, when they start looking at the neurotransmitter side, we have people that, like I was addicted to endorphins and exercise. Is there anything that it does in the brain where it can help? You said that people just feel maybe more calm and more focused. Does it have is that just all neurotransmitters that it impacts, or is it doing something else?
Yeah, it definitely has an impact on the neurotransmitters. One of them being GABA. There's
And
also
GABA does and GABA does what? What does GABA do for people? Like what's the benefit of having GABA or GABA having balance?
Yeah, it's basically our calming neurotransmitter. So that one is kind of the one that allows us to kind of stay calm and not go too high on excitability. Right. Then we talk about serotonin and dopamine, our feel good or happy hormones. There's an impact there. Our neurotransmitters, there's an impact there as well. But I think the main thing with ketones is they're able to directly be utilized by the brain. The second is they impact some of these neurotransmitters. And then, like, third, you could say is in doing so, there's several things that impact neurotransmitters, but a lot of them often lead to heightened excitability, where like it's too much. You're getting like jitters. It's like, and then because of that, when sometimes too much of something isn't always good. And so sometimes it goes too high, and when neurotransmitters go too high, your body will counterbalance that. Fortunately, ketones never hit that point where like you don't get this huge down like drop off of neurotransmitters. Like if you have sometimes when you take certain I'll say substances or sometimes even with caffeine, like sometimes you go too high and then you fall off. That's not what ketones do. They have an even level of neurotransmitters to really optimize that threshold.
Okay, very good, very good. All right, that's great. I do have a couple more questions. Do you have a few minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. I'm gonna attempt this one and see if I can pull out what she's asking. But do we know whether there's a threshold BHB concentration needed for the signaling benefits?
Hmm.
Kind of like for the inhibition of the NLRP3 or the HDAC effect or the BDNF. Is there like I know Dr. Scher talks about this therapy level, like everybody's responding at different levels, or is it more individualized, or is there a threshold for that to be activated?
Yeah, I wish we knew exactly what the threshold was. We do know that there's a minimum amount that's needed, and I think that's individualized, right?
Right.
And the reason I say that is part of my dissertation back when I was in school was looking at various different people's responses to exogenous ketones and the impact it had on their ketone levels. And this comes up all the time. It's come up over the 10 years. And oftentimes people think just because I get a higher level than you, I'm better, right? And that's not always the case. In fact, like I can right now, I'll give you an example. I can probably drink. I haven't done this, but I've done it with 3 packets of our Nat. But I would say probably I could drink 3 packs of K1, and I might get up to like 1 millimole, which doesn't seem like a lot, right? That's like maybe. Now, does that mean that our ketones are not effective? Absolutely not. I could probably drink seven. Not that I'm recommending that, but I could drink seven at one time, and I might get up to 1.2 millimoles. The reason I'm telling you that is my body is so efficient at utilizing ketones because I've been drinking them for 11 years that I have so many monocarboxylic acid transporters that take them up and utilize them. So as soon as I'm consuming them, they're getting pulled into brain, muscle, heart tissue. Whereas someone else who might just be starting out, they might get a higher level, and over time, the blood level may decrease, but the utilization level goes up. So I think that's an important thing because oftentimes we miss that mark. But I think it's very important to differentiate blood level versus utilization level. And unfortunately, there's not like a simple test to go, oh, was my utilization level high? If you are consuming them, and as you consume them more and more and more, your utilization level will go up because you're creating these transporters to take up and utilize them.
You're better at, and you're and they're staying healthy doing it. I think that's probably the important part. Um, and so, I don't know if you remember this. We were in Colombia, and the gentleman, I don't remember his name, but you guys were testing his blood. He's testing his blood like all throughout the day. And I remember he woke up and he's like, I must have had too much broccoli and steak last night because my ketone levels were a lot down. And you started laughing. You told him you told him what you just said, and it was funny because it was like, and he was doing strict diet and stressing about his numbers all the time. And that's when I realized, oh, there's a lot more going on here than what we could even measure at the time. So I appreciate that insight. So, another question here. Is there any ketones? I'm not going to say the way I learned this word. It's not a word; it's an abbreviation. But is there any or is there any research on ketones and the effects on the MTHFR gene mutation or variant, excuse me.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything directly with ketones themselves that I've seen. I think I see more with the vitamins.
Right.
Methylated vitamins I think are very important for that. But ketones themselves, I wouldn't see any negative interaction with any genes, not only that one that we've seen. We
Right.
haven't seen.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if anything, I think that it's creating the environment for everything to work a little more efficient if you have that variant. And from what I understand, most people have some level of the variant, at least these days and where we're living. So, all right, let me just see if there's anything else. Um, I don't. Everybody goes right to the medicine side, and I'm trying to avoid that. And if you guys put a question about like a medical condition or something like that, these are really hard platforms to discuss those then because they can easily get miscued as a treatment for that. So if you want to hit me privately, I can see if I can send you some literature on that. If it even exists at all, but some of that it doesn't yet. So here's one for someone who has trained hard and deliberately cycles carbohydrates, is there any advantage to having glucose, glycogen, or exogenous ketones available at the same time? Or does insulin blunt any of the signaling benefits of the BHB or the C5? That's a great question.
Yeah, I actually think people who are training hard, like I'm actually working on training for my first high rocks race in 2 months. And yeah, I hate running, but I'm doing it anyway. And so part of my strategy, and I've done this I do obstacle course races just to, it's like for me, it's like a check-in to be like, where am I at fitness wise? Like I need to like, I got a little bit of competitiveness still in my bones from playing sports my whole life. So it's my way of doing that. But my strategy the entire time ever since I started doing them is to use dual fuel. So I will literally have the week going up towards these races. I will slowly increase my carbohydrate intake. And then on the day of, on longer races, like I'll do with High Rocks, I'll have one small gel, and my gels are like honey. Like that's my source is like organic honey. And I will do a large bolus. Likely, this will be 2 servings of K1. And the reason that works is because ketones will get burned first in that instance, primarily utilized inside of the brain and then go to muscle, while the carbohydrates will be used in the muscle secondarily. So you do get a benefit of like being able, I like to say it spares the glycogen, meaning like normally, if you did not have the ketones, you would just burn through those carbohydrates. And that's why you see long distance endurance athletes continuing to do gel after gel after gel. Well, for them, if they're doing 4 or 5 gels, I think that we would see you be able to cut that down by probably half by having ketones instead, because it's sparing that glycogen from being broken down while also giving you the fuel source of the ketones. So yeah, I think it's a great strategy.
Exactly. And that's what I've been doing. I don't know if you know, I've coached now quite a few century races, runs. And you know, the keto kick shots, the glass, that's what I used. And we had a belt that we'd put them on. And because sometimes, I mean, they're running for 100 miles. So it's like sometimes they're just by themselves for hours and on end. And so we made shots, and the same thing we would, and they had their selected choice of glucose. And then we would make a shot of ketones, electrolytes were in there, and then we kept electrolytes throughout the entire race. And then we do shots. And we figured about every 90 minutes was kind of the perfect storm for them. But then it could get a little heavy. So then we had to extend it out a little bit, meaning it's so much you're drinking all the time. But
Yep.
anyway, that's a great strategy. Awesome. Well, Dr. Ryan, I truly appreciate your time. Um, and really all your insights and information. It's great. I do have a little bit of bad news, and I'll say this on here is I was messaging you, you saw me looking down. Dr. Andy, who was supposed to be on, has a long, nice presentation, had a family emergency. And I got a text, kind of a panic text. She's like, I can record it quick and then send it to you and you can just play it. I'm like, no, you go take care of your family. We'll have her back on. So tonight, I do want to just end it with really what Dr. Ryan just talked about. I know we've been talking about the brain. We're going to get deeper into that with Dr. Andy's talk. And we actually have a special for everybody that's on here. We're going to send out, and if you don't get this, please check your spam. But we're going to send out another video here in the next 24 hours of a researcher, a good friend of mine, actually, Dr. Brett Scher, who talked about this similar topic last December on ketogenic therapies. And we'll send that out too, so everybody can really get to dive into the real impact of the brain. And a lot of people come for weight loss or body composition and energy, but this brain conversation is real, and it's something that we need to start earlier in life. But with that said, Dr. Ryan, I don't know if you've been following me. You're stalking me online, I think. But I talked a little bit more recently about this is like an added bonus, but about raising your standard. And we talk about that in everything in life. We talk about it in our relationships. We talk about it in, a lot of times in ourselves. But one of the things that I realized in health and wellness is that we do a really poor job of raising our standard of where we accept our health to be. And when you start looking at the data that we've been talking about for now quite about 11 years is, um, so I'm going to go get my VO2 max 3 test done. It's been a while. I've had a lot of surgery, so I haven't been capable of doing that. And go and get my DEXA done and my RMR done to find out where my current standard is to decide how far I want to raise it. And so anyway, I've been talking a lot about that. And you said that I got to find out where I'm at. What's my benchmark? And when you get over 45, 50, maybe a little older, what we know is that you may not get any better, but you don't want to let it go down fast, is at least the minimum. It's like you want to maintain that. But if you don't know where you're starting from, it's really hard. So my challenge, and I'm open to Dr. Ryan giving you guys a challenge too, is everybody on here, take the next week and create a standard for yourself. If it's not a crazy run like a race that Ryan's doing, or a crazy test that I'm doing, but go do a mile walk or a mile run. Go do as many push-ups if you can, and write it down, and then check in once a month, or maybe every 6 months, or once a year, and let's raise your standard. Do you want to get stronger? Do you want to get faster? Do you want to get healthier? Because I think it's really important to do that. And we don't want to wait till we're 80 to realize that we should change. Let's change. Let's start it now, and set ourselves up for the long term success. So, any insight on that? Anything you would like to share with that?
I love it. I mean, for me, I think my life has changed dramatically over the last 2.5 years with kids. I think one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, who are you playing for? And for me, that's when my son was born. I feel like my life just like completely flipped, and I was like, oh my gosh, I now have this little human being who thinks I'm Spider-Man, Superman, everything, the biggest hero in his life, and I need to act like it, right? Because I want to see his kids and their kids. That's who I'm playing for. And so for me, that's the driver of why I do everything that I do. And I think, to Dustin, to your point, it's it's not just oh, I need to go do this big race. I think oftentimes we set too big of goals, and big goals are great, but we need to have chunks as well of understanding one of the biggest hacks. And I'm telling you right now, everyone can do this tomorrow. Here's your task: is if you find yourself sitting down in a chair, if you're whether it's on the couch, whether it's at the computer or whatever, every hour get up and do an exercise snack. I call it an exercise snack, meaning go do either as many air squats or push-ups as possible every hour on the hour. And that has a huge impact, even better than a long 60-second or 16-minute walk. Those small, what I call exercise snacks, absolute game changers in your health. And there's no reason why you can't fit it in, because it'll be a minute or less. So that's my challenge to you.
Awesome. Is there a certain amount per day that's like kind of the benchmark we should shoot for? Is it 3 times? Is it 8 times? Is it 15 times a day?
I would say 3 times a day minimum. And if you can do up to 7 or 8, great. But 3 times minimum, just break the periods where you're sitting around without any type of movement. Break it up, and one of the ways we do that is through exercise snacks.
So once again, I reiterate that it's 1 minute. It's an exercise snack, and just to final the talk tonight, do you mind sharing with them the impact of having ketones in your blood while doing that little exercise snack? Does that actually have an impact on the brain? Does science suggest that at all? Brain.
Yes, huge impact, huge impact. And you have the ability to now have an impact on your brain, your cognitive element, but also performance, right? Having the ability to perform better, have sustained energy while you're performing. It's an ultimate game changer. So.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ryan. I'm going to put that challenge in because I do move around a lot, but I've never done it on the hour. So I'm going to get a little structured. My goal is at least 5 times a day. I'm going to shoot for 5. That's going to be my five exercise snack. So if you guys want to do this with us, you can do it. Hit your stories, do a little recording on high speed or something, post it on your stories. Tag Ryan, tag myself, tag Prove It into it, tag your leaders into it, tag your friends into this, and let's make an impact. Let's start increasing our standards so that we can live our best life. So, Dr. Ryan, truly appreciate your insights, your information, and all your wisdom that you keep pouring into us. Thank you so much. We all truly appreciate that. And for everybody else out there, thanks for plugging in with us. If you're new and you're just learning about this, you're kind of like, hey, that was great. That was cool information. And if somebody invited you to check this out, get back to them, talk to them, ask them some questions. Now, they're not your doctor. They're probably not going to know what Dr. Ryan just said. They shouldn't know that. I mean, he spends his whole life researching this stuff. But they can help you find some of that resources, or they might put you on a call with somebody like myself or a team leader to answer your questions. But all I can say is this, is I've been drinking this product for 11 years, and life was not easy. life has gotten more simple since I've been using this product, but my life is more complicated, if that makes sense, because I'm operating at a whole nother level. I'm living my best life. And there's so many people on here right now that are living a better life because they introduced this product as a foundational product. It's not the end all be all. It's one of the most important health products I've ever seen, and I believe you'll ever experience. At the same time, we have a really cool community that does lead with education, that does try to inspire you for better. Because what we know is that it's collaborative. It's meaning there's a product, but there's also programs and tools and education that go along with that to set you up for success to be the healthiest version of yourself. So please keep plugging in, keep showing up, and yes. Our thoughts and prayers go out to Dr. Andy and her family, and I hope that the best. I don't actually know what happened, but I pray that everything is good for her. And we will get you some more insights and information. We're going to send this out. So please stay tuned, or maybe we'll have her live and we'll do this again. So, with that said, y'all have an unbelievable night. Thank you all for being on. And make sure you grab your ketones if you don't have any, because they're going to change your life forever. Cheers, y'all.